Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi. Mazal Tov again to those that completed Seder Moed. We continue now B'ezrat Hashem Bli Neder with Seder Nashim, and we begin with Masechet Yevamot. If a man Chas v'Shalom dies without children, the Torah commands his brother to marry his widow in order to establish a name for the dead brother so that his name not be blotted out from Israel. This mitzvah is known as Yibum, and it is the subject of Masechet Yevamot. The law of Yibum is taught in the Torah in Sefer Dvarim, chapter 25, verses 5 through 10. We begin now with Perek Aleph, Mishnah Aleph. Today's Mishnayot should be Le'ilun Nishmat, Neria ben Svetlana, Ranbayev, and Eliyahu ben Burcha Israelov, Menuchatam began Eden, Amen, and Le'avdi ben Nachaim Nachaim, v'derefua shelema, v'dianir Shon ben Rosa, v'tor Shah Chulei Israel. Now, if a married man dies without children, there is a mitzvah for his brother to either marry the widow, perform yibum, or free her to marry others to chalitza. Although a brother's former wife is usually considered an erva, a relative that one is not allowed to marry under penalty of karet, the Torah makes an exception and permits marrying a brother's widow for purposes of yibum. However, if the widow is also an erva to him in another way, for example, she is his daughter, meaning the dead brother was married to his own niece, the living brother's daughter, which is permitted, then no exception is made. The brother is not allowed to marry her, and she is free to marry others without chalitza. The source for this law is the verse in Sefer Vayikra, chapter 18, verse 18. You shall not take a woman in addition to her sister to make them rivals, litzror, to uncover the nakedness of one upon the other, aleha, in her lifetime. The Torah here teaches that while a person's wife or former wife is alive, her sister is an ervat to him and he may not marry her. He uses the word aleha as a reference to a Torah passage regarding yibum, where the same word appears in Sefer Dvarim chapter 25 verse 5. This teaches that the prohibition against marrying a wife's sister is not suspended even for purposes of yibum, meaning in a case where two brothers married two sisters and one of the brothers died without children, the living brother cannot perform yibum or chalitza with the widow because she is the sister of his wife. Therefore, if there are no other brothers, the widow is free to marry others without yibum or chalitza. The same applies to all other cases in which the widow is an ervat to the living brother, since the Torah in Sefer Vayikra chapter 18 verse 29 equates all the erva relationships. If, however, there is at least one brother to whom she is not an erva, then that brother has the mitzvah to perform either yibum or chalitza. Our Mishnah discusses a case where a brother died childless and left multiple widows. The Torah permits a man to have more than one wife. Approximately 1,000 years ago, Rabbeinu Gershom of Germany banned this practice, and his ban was accepted by all Ashkenazi Jewry. Shulchan Aruch and Rama speak about this in Even HaEzel, chapter 1, halachot 10 and 11. So again, our Mishnah discusses a case where a brother died childless and left multiple widows, and one of them is an erva to the living brother. It teaches that not only is the erva exempt from yibum or chalitza, but so too are all the widows, the co-wives of the erva. The general rule for a man who dies without children and leaves a number of widows is that one of the living brothers performs yibum or chalitza with only one of the widows, and the others are then free to marry anyone. This we will see later on a little bit, B'ezrat Hashem Bli Neder in Mishnah Bet. The Mishnah now then will list all the different ways in which a deceased brother's widow can be an erva to a living brother. Chamesh Esrei Nashim potrot tzarotehen. There are 15 women who, because they are an erva to the only living brother of their dead husband, exempt their co-wives from chalitza and yibum, meaning the dead brother Reuven left more than one widow. There is only one living brother Shimon, and one of the widows, let's say Rachel, is an erva to him. The Mishnah teaches that not only is Rachel exempt from chalitza and yibum, but all the other widows, Rachel's co-wives, are also exempt. And the source for this exemption of co-wives is the word litzrol, to make them rivals, that we mentioned earlier. Now it teaches that not only is an erva herself exempt from yibum, but her rivals, meaning her co-wives, are also exempt. V'tzarot tzaroten min chalitza min yibum, and they also exempt the co-wives of their co-wives from chalitza and yibum, meaning If in addition to the first brother to whom she is an erva, there was a second brother to whom she was not an erva, and he performed yibum with her co-wife, and then he too died childless with two wives, then both his widows are also exempt from chalitza and from yibum with the first brother, one because she was previously the co-wife of his erva, and the other because she is now the co-wife of that co-wife. Now since the erva was not forbidden to this second brother, he was required to perform yibum with one of the two widows. He chose to do so with the widow who was the co-wife of the erva. This brother also had another wife, so after performing yibum, he had two wives. His original wife and the co-wife of the erva. And now, like we said, he too died childless with two wives. Both his widows are also exempt chalitza and yibum with the first brother, one because she was previously the co-wife of his erva, and the other because she is now the co-wife of that co-wife. Now, whoever can see, it's very important when learning Masechet Yevamot to look at illustrations. The Art School Elucidator brings illustrations, the Art School Gemara, and many other books that illustrate the cases. Just to say it out, let's say the dead brother Reuven left more than one widow. For example, Rachel and Leah. There are two living brothers, Shimon and Levi. And for one of them, Shimon, one of the widows, Rachel, is an erva. So Shimon cannot perform yibum with either Rachel or Leah, as the Mishnah is taught. For Levi, however, neither widow is an erva, so he can perform yibum with either one. Levi decided to perform yibum with Leah, and he also has another wife, Miriam. Levi then died without children, so both Leah and Miriam fall to Shimon, the only living brother. The Mishnah teaches that not only is Shimon unable to perform yibum with Leah, who was the co-wife of his erva, he cannot even perform it with Miriam, who is the co-wife of the co-wife, meaning Leah, of his erva, Rachel. Therefore, both Leah and Miriam are free to marry without chalitza. And the Mishnah says, at Sof HaOlam, this continues forever. Meaning, if there is a third brother and he performed yibum with the co-wife of the erva and then died childless with two wives, then the co-wife of the co-wife of the co-wife of the erva is also exempted from chalitza and yibum with the first brother. To illustrate this case, instead of the dead brother Reuven having only two brothers, like we said, Shimon and Levi, he had three, Shimon, Levi, and Yehuda. The case unfolded exactly like we said, but after the second brother Levi died without children, a third brother Yehuda performed yibum with Miriam. If Yehuda has another wife, Esther, and dies childless, Shimon cannot perform yibum with Esther, since she is the co-wife of the co-wife Miriam, of the co-wife Leah, of his erva, Rachel. And if there is a fourth brother, and he performs yibum with the co-wife of the co-wife of the co-wife, and he too dies childless with two wives, etc. The same rule. This rule goes on endlessly for as many brothers and groups of co-wives as there may be. Now the Mishnah details all the 15 ways in which a woman who was married to the dead brother can be an erva to the living brother. Ve'eluhen, these are the 15 women. The first three are ervas because they are descendants of the living brother. Number 1, Bito, his daughter. Number 2, Bat Bito, his daughter's daughter. Number 3, Bat Beno, and his son's daughter. Meaning the dead brother Reuven had been married to the living brother's daughter, Shimon's daughter, or daughter's daughter, or son's daughter. Shimon does not perform yibum or chalitza with the widow since she is either his daughter or granddaughter, and similarly he does not perform yibum or chalitza with her co-wives or their co-wives, etc. The next three are descendants of the living brother's wife. Number 4, Bat Ishto, his wife's daughter. Number 5, Bat Benah, the wife's son's daughter. Number 6, Bat Bita, and the wife's daughter's daughter. A man is not allowed to marry his wife's daughter or granddaughter, even though they are not his own daughter or granddaughter, as the Torah says in Vayikra chapter 18, verse 17. Therefore, if Reuven was married to the daughter or granddaughter of his brother Shimon's wife, and Reuven died childless, Shimon does not perform yibum or chalitza with that widow or any of her co-wives, etc., since they are forbidden descendants of his wife. Now the next three are ancestors of the living brother's wife. Number 7, Chamoto, his wife's mother. Number 8, Vem Chamoto, his wife's mother's mother. And number 9, Vem Chamiv, his wife's father's mother. Meaning the dead brother was married to the mother or grandmother of the living brother's wife. These women too are forbidden to the living brother from the Torah in Sefer Vayikra chapter 18 verse 17, since a man may not marry both the woman and her daughter or granddaughter, regardless of which one he married first. Now when two men are half brothers from the father's side, meaning they share the same father but have different mothers, and one of them dies childless, the living half-brother is supposed to perform Yibum or Chalitza with the widow. This is derived from the Torah's use of the word brothers, Achim, with regard to both Yibum as well as the 12 sons of Yaakov Avinu. We learn from this that the mitzvah of Yibum applies to brothers that resemble the sons of Yaakov Avinu, who all share the same father but had 4 different mothers. There is no mitzvah of Yibum for brothers who have the same mother but different fathers. Now the next 2 ervas are women that the living half-brother cannot marry because they are related to him from his mother's side. Number 10, Achoto Me'imo, his half-sister from his mother's side. To illustrate, a man with a son, Reuven, from his first wife married a woman with a daughter, Miriam, from her first husband. Together they had another son, Shimon. Reuven and Miriam, who were not related to each other, married, and Reuven died childless. Miriam therefore falls to Shimon, her husband's half-brother, for Yibum. She, however, is an erva to Shimon since they both have the same mother. Again, this diagram is brought down in the article elucidated by note 13. Number 11, V'achot Imo, and his mother's sister. A man had 2 sons, Reuven from his first wife and Shimon from his second wife. Reuven married the sister of his father's second wife. Shimon cannot marry the widow since a mother's sister is an erva. That again is brought down the diagram in note 14. The Mishnah goes back to a case that could even involve full brothers in order to list one more involved that involves a sister. V'achot ishto, his wife's sister, meaning 2 brothers married 2 sisters and one of the brothers died. The living brother may not marry his widow because she is his wife's sister. The Mishnah returns to half brothers from the father's side. It lists a third erva that the living half brother cannot marry because she is related to him from his mother's side. Number 13, Ve'eshet achiv me'imo, the wife of his half brother from his mother's side, meaning a man with the son Reuven from his first wife married a woman with the son Shimon from her first husband. Together they had another son, Levi. So Reuven and Levi have the same father, while Shimon and Levi have the same mother. Shimon married a woman and died in a case where there was no need for Yibum. Reuven, who was not related to Shimon, married the widow and died childless. The widow Miriam now falls to Reuven's brother Levi for Yibum. She, however, is an erva to Levi since she was once married to his half-brother Shimon. That again is diagram brought down in note 16. The Mishnah lists one more erva that involves a brother. Number 14, Ve'eshet achiv shelo haya ba'olamo, the wife of his brother whose world he did not share, meaning the wife of a brother who died before this brother was born. Reuven died childless. Shimon, his brother, performed Yibum, and he died childless. At some point between the deaths of Reuven and Shimon, a third brother, Levi, was born. Now, Levi would never have been allowed to perform Yibum with Reuven's widow, since he and Reuven were not alive at the same time. And the Torah says regarding Yibum in Sefer Dvarim, chapter 25, verse 4, when brothers dwell together, ki yeshvu achim yachdav. Reuven's widow is therefore an erva to Levi, since she is a brother's wife with whom he could not perform Yibum. Therefore, even though she later married Shimon, with whom Levi was alive at the same time, and Shimon died childless, Levi cannot perform Yibum with her since she was once married to Reuven, who died before she was born. Similarly, she exempts all of Shimon's other wives as well, and this will be discussed further in chapter 2, Mishnayot 1 through 2. And again, the diagram is brought down near note 17 in the article elucidated on the Mishnah. The Mishnah completes its list. Number 15, V'chalato, his daughter-in-law, meaning Shimon's son married a woman and died. Shimon's brother Reuven then married the widow and died childless. Shimon cannot perform Yibum with the widow since she was once his daughter-in-law. Now the Mishnah recaps the law. These women exempt their co-wives and the co-wives of their co-wives from chalitza and ibum, and even exempt the co-wives of the second co-wives and so on forever for as many brothers and sets of co-wives as there may be. The Mishnah teaches that these 15 women do not exempt their co-wives from chalitza or ibum if they were no longer married to the deceased brother at the time he died. The chulan, however, with regard to all these 15 women, imetu, if they died before their husband, O me'anu, or if they performed mi'un and thereby annulled their marriage to him before he died. Now, according to biblical law, a father may give his underage daughter in marriage. In the case of an orphan, the sages gave this right to her mother or brothers. In addition, if a father gave his underage daughter in marriage and the husband divorced her or died before she reached maturity, the sages allowed her to marry someone else without her father's consent. Since the marriage in these last two cases are valid only by rabbinic law and they involve underage girls, the rabbis did not require a regular divorce in order to end them. Rather, the girl may annul the marriage at any time before she becomes of age by declaring in the court that she refuses to continue in the marriage. This process is called mi'un, refusal. The Mishnah will speak about this more in chapter 13, Mishnah 1 through 5. But again, if, with regard to all these 15 women, if they died before their husband, or if they performed mi'un, and thereby annulled their marriage to him before he died, onit galshu, or if they were divorced by him before he died, or shenimtzu ailunit, or if they were found to be ailunit before he died, meaning they were found to have certain physical characteristics that show they can never have children, and their marriage was therefore annulled because discovering such a severe physical defect makes the whole marriage a mistake and it is annulled as if it never happened. Tsaroten mutarot, in all of these cases, their co-wives, to whom the dead man was still married at the time of his death, are permitted to the living brother, since at the time of the husband's death, he was not married to the erva. An erva exempts her co-wife only if they became widowed together. Since the living brother cannot perform yibum with one of them, he cannot do so with the other one either. But if the erva was no longer married to the deceased brother at the time he died, she does not exempt the remaining widow. The living brother can therefore perform yibum or chalitza with one of the remaining wives. The Mishnah points out that for some of the 15 women listed in our Mishnah, there are not so many ways in which their marriage to the deceased brother could have ended before he died. Note, however, that you cannot say regarding his wife's mother, uvem chamoto, or his wife's mother's mother, uvem chamiv, or his wife's father's mother, shenimtzu alunit, that they were found to be alunit, since an alunit cannot have children. And if she did not have children, the living brother could not have been married to her daughter or granddaughter. O sheme'anu, nor can you say that the mother-in-law or grandmother-in-law performed mi'un with the deceased brother before he died. This is because a woman can perform mi'un only before she reaches maturity, and since a woman can have children only after she reaches maturity, it cannot be that her daughter married the living brother while she herself was still married to the deceased brother. To exempt her co-wife, a woman must be an erva to the surviving brother while she was married to the brother who died. So she could not have been young enough to refuse the brother who died and also be the mother-in-law of the living brother. And that is in Mishnah Aleph. The Rav does discuss a 16th erva that exempts the tzaroten and tzarot, the co-wives. That is brought down and discussed in the commentaries. We continue now with Mishnah Bet. This Mishnah expands on the law discussed in the previous Mishnah. It begins by describing the case in which an erva exempts her co-wife from chalitza or yibum. Ketzad potrot tzarotehen. What is the case in which these 15 women exempt their co-wives from chalitza or yibum, as the previous Mishnah taught? Hayta bito achad mikol ha'arayot ha'elu nisua la'achiv. If a man's daughter or any one of these other women who are in erva was married to his brother, v'lo isha acheret, and this brother has another wife, vamet, and he died, kishem shebito petura, just as the man's daughter is exempt from chalitza or yibum since she is an erva to him, kach tzaratah petura, so too her co-wife is exempted. The Mishnah describes the case in which the co-wife of the erva is exempted from yibum or chalitza. This occurs when there are two surviving brothers, and one of them is the father of the erva. He cannot perform yibum or chalitza with his daughter or her co-wife, but the second brother is obligated to do so. If his daughter's co-wife went and married the second brother, meaning the second surviving brother performed yibum with her, and the second brother has another wife as well, once a man performs yibum with his brother's widow, she too becomes his regular wife. So his original wife and the wife he acquired through yibum now become co-wives. Vamet. And then he too died without children, leaving these two widows to the first brother. Keshem shetzarat bito pitua. Then just as his daughter's co-wife is exempt from chalitza yibum with him because she became forbidden to him as an erva when the original brother died and he was not allowed to perform yibum with her, kach tzarat tzarata pitua, so too the co-wife of the co-wife is exempted. The Mishnah now expands on the previous Mishnah's statement that this continues forever. Afilu hen mea, even if there are 100 brothers, and the co-wife of the daughter married one of them, and he had another wife, and then he died without children, then both widows are forbidden to his daughter's father, and so on forever. Then both widows are forbidden to this daughter's father, and so on forever. The Mishnah describes the case in which the erva was no longer married to the deceased man when he died, so she does not exempt her co-wife from yibum or chalitza. Ketzad im metu tzaroten mutarot. What is the case in the previous Mishnah where if one of the 15 women died, their co-wives are permitted to the brother for yibum? It is as follows. If his daughter or any one of these other women who are in erva was married to his brother, and his brother also had another wife, Meta bito nitgarsha, and his daughter then died or was divorced, thereby ending the marriage, meaning Reuven's daughter was married to his brother Shimon, who also had another wife. Shimon then divorced Reuven's daughter, or she died, leaving Shimon with just one wife, and the same applies if the marriage was cancelled by mi'un or by her being found to be an Ailonit. And then his brother died, then the daughter's former co-wife is permitted to him for yibum. Since the erva was no longer married to the brother when he died, she does not exempt her co-wife. The Mishnah addresses a case that was not discussed in the previous Mishnah. We learned there that if an underage girl was given in marriage by her mother or brothers, she can simply refuse to stay married to her husband and thereby annul the marriage. The Mishnah continues, any of these ervas who could have performed mi'un and thereby canceled the marriage to the deceased brother before he died, meaning the erva wife had not yet reached maturity when her husband died, but did not perform mi'un and was still married to him when he died, does not completely exempt her co-wife. Rather, her co-wife must perform chalitza with the surviving brother, but may not be taken in ibum by him. Since biblical law does not recognize her marriage to the deceased brother, mi'un releases a girl from a marriage only because it was never valid on a biblical level. On the biblical level, the co-wife was the only wife. Therefore, on the biblical level, the living brother must either marry her or perform chalitza so she is free to marry others. However, since the rabbis do recognize his marriage, they said that he should not do yibum since it looks like he is committing a sin of marrying an ervas co-wife. He must therefore perform chalitza in order to free her to marry others. And that is the Rabotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.